I waited 94 minutes. Not one message. Not even a lie. I'd folded the napkins, memorized what each of them liked to eat. I even wore the tie Mom said made me look almost like family. At 7:10, I asked the waiter for more water. At 7:45, he stopped making eye contact. By 8 o'clock, the hostess leaned in and whispered, "Sir, are you sure they're coming?" That's when it hit me. They weren't late. They were together. Just not with me. I stood up, trying not to make a scene. Tried to smile like it didn't hurt. Tried to pretend 43 years of being almost family didn't just collapse in a single dinner reservation. And then, a man I'd never seen before pulled out the chair across from me and said, "They lied about your mother. You were never supposed to be theirs." That night, I drove home in silence. No music, no radio, just the sound of my own breathing. There's a kind of quiet that doesn't soothe you. It presses on your chest, like a weight that won't shift. I pulled into my apartment lot, turned off the engine, and sat in the dark with a to-go bag full of untouched food. Turkey, cranberry, sweet potato mash, enough to feed 6 people, but not enough to make me feel seen. I was 43 years old. A man with a decent job, clean apartment, steady bills. But at that moment I felt no older than 7. Like a boy who'd forgotten he didn't have a place at the table, and dared to hope anyway. That wasn't the first time I'd been left behind. It was just the first time I finally stopped making excuses for them. Let me back up a bit. My name's Graham Ellis. I work in data processing for a transportation company. Spreadsheets, tracking reports, numbers.
All day.
It's not glamorous, but it pays the rent. I grew up in the Dalton family. They took me in when I was still in diapers. Said they were doing the Lord's work, though I don't recall the Lord needing that many tax deductions. To most people it looked like I had a stable, loving home. 2 parents, a big backyard, and 2 siblings, Chloe and Adam, both younger, both theirs by blood. But here's the thing. You don't have to say "you're not one of us" out loud for a child to feel it deep in their bones. It's in the way your name isn't on the wall next to theirs. In the birthday cakes that don't have your favorite flavor. In how your thank you is expected, but your pain is inconvenient. As a kid, I tried to earn love like it was a paycheck. Top grades, clean room, always helpful. I even learned to stay invisible when they needed family time. I told myself it was okay, that I was lucky to have a roof, that maybe, one day, they'd call me son without sounding like they meant charity. But when you reach your 40s and still find yourself hoping for a seat at the table, that's when you realize it was never about effort. It was about being born outside the circle. And no matter how much you try to squeeze in, some circles just don't stretch. That Thanksgiving night, with the restaurant candle flickering against untouched plates, something in me broke. Not with rage, not with drama, just quietly, like a thread that finally gave up trying to hold a family together. And that's exactly when the truth walked in, wearing a brown overcoat, and knew my name, even before I said a word. They took me in when I was a baby. That's the story I was told. No photos, no paperwork. Just a vague explanation passed down like a family rumor. Mom, Janice, always said, "We couldn't have more kids at the time. God sent you." Then 2 years later, Chloe was born, and after her, Adam. Funny how God stopped sending after that. From the outside, the Daltons looked like the perfect suburban family. Brick house, two-car garage, church on Sundays. But inside, I always felt like a guest in their picture. Like someone who had to prove, every single day, that I deserved to still be there. Chloe tolerated me. She was the golden girl, bright, polished, full of plans. She'd talk about college tours and science fairs, and I'd nod, pretend I understood. We weren't close, but she wasn't cruel, just distant. Like a cousin you only saw at Thanksgiving. Adam, on the other hand, he made sure I never forgot my place. He'd borrow my allowance, hide my shoes before school, blame me when things went missing. And every time I told our parents, Janice would sigh and say, "Boys will be boys. You're older, be the bigger person." So I learned to swallow things, to take up less space, to apologize for storms I didn't cause. I remember one Christmas, I must have been 9, when Adam unwrapped a new bicycle with a red bow. Yeah, Chloe got the necklace she'd circled in the Sears catalog. And I got socks. 3 pairs. No tag. No wrapping. I smiled anyway, said thank you. That night, I overheard Janice telling Hugh he should be grateful we didn't have to take him in, and Hugh replied, "He's lucky we kept him, especially now with the others." That line stayed with me. He's lucky we kept him. Not love, not wanted, just kept. Like an old piece of furniture that still work. In high school, I buried myself in books, not because I love them, but because they couldn't reject me. Books didn't care if you were blood or not. They let you in. No conditions. I graduated near the top of my class. No one came to the ceremony. Hugh had a work trip. Janice had a headache. Adam took the car to the lake. I waited by the school steps in my cap and gown until the janitor asked if I needed a ride home. When I turned 18, I didn't move out right away. I got a job, helped pay bills, mowed the lawn, fixed the gutters. Every time I thought of leaving, I'd hear Janice say, "Don't forget who raised you." And I hadn't. I never forgot. But I think what she meant was, "Don't forget what you owe us." There were moments, small ones, when I thought maybe things were getting better. Like the Thanksgiving 3 years ago, when Janice asked me to carve the turkey. She said, "You're good with your hands, like your uncle." I wanted to ask, "What uncle?" But I stayed quiet, just like I always had. Looking back now, I realize they never expected me to ask questions, never thought I'd go looking. They gave me just enough comfort to keep me loyal, but never enough love to make me feel whole. I wasn't raised. I was managed, maintained. And for most of my life, I thought that was the best I could hope for. Until that night, until the stranger sat across from me and cracked the floor beneath everything I believed about myself. He didn't just bring truth. He brought the kind of silence that makes you remember every time you were told to sit still, be quiet, and be grateful for crumbs. He said his name was Walter Ridge. Soft voice, steady hands, eyes like he'd carried too many secrets for too long. He didn't touch the food, didn't even open the menu, just looked at me and said, "I'd been trying to find the right time to tell you. But I think, after what they did tonight, you deserve to know." I didn't respond, didn't blink, just stared. Walter reached into his coat pocket and slid out a photo. It was old, yellowed at the edges. 2 women in a garden, laughing. One of them was Janice. The other looked just like me. Same eyes, same jawline, same stubborn brow. That's Delilah. he said. Janice's younger sister. Your mother. I wanted to laugh, or scream, or ask if this was some cruel joke. But something about his tone, the way he said, your mother, like it was sacred, made my heart stop. She got pregnant when she was 19, he continued. No one in the family approved. Janice offered to help, said she'd raise the baby until Delilah got her life together. But things didn't go that way. What happened to her? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Pause. She died. Car accident, just a year after you were born. After that, they just never told you. Said it was better this way, that you'd forget. I felt the air leave my lungs. All those years I begged for crumbs of love, and they were sitting on the truth like it was some family heirloom they'd rather keep locked away than share. 2. They never adopted you, Graham, Walter said. Not legally. You were never theirs on paper. They didn't even change your name until you were 3. He handed me a second envelope. Inside was a birth certificate. Worn, creased, fragile. And there it was. Mother, Delilah May Dalton. Father, unknown. Child, Graham Ellis. They kept in my name. But not my truth. The room spun. The walls felt too tight. All I could hear was Janice's voice in my head.
We took you in. You should be grateful.
Grateful? For erasing who I was? For making me beg to be seen? Walter reached across the table. I know this is a lot, but you deserve to know you weren't abandoned. You were taken. Those words hit harder than any slap. Not abandoned. Taken. Suddenly, every memory cracked open. The Christmas with the socks. The graduation no one came to. The family portraits I wasn't in. None of it was neglect. It was control. I left the restaurant with the photo and envelope in my coat. Didn't even take the food. I drove without music, without direction. I just needed air. For years, I believed I was the extra piece, the one God forgot. But now I knew the emphasis, truth. Pause, 300 milliseconds. They didn't forget me. They erased me. They, emphasis, rewrote my beginning so they could keep their image clean and their secrets buried. That night, I sat in my apartment until the sun rose. I didn't cry, didn't rage. I just stared at the wall and whispered her name over and over. Delilah, Delilah, Delilah. My mother, my real mother. Someone I never got to meet. Someone I had lived my whole life without, but whose blood had been calling to me in every moment I'd felt out of place. I had questions, hundreds, and I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep pretending anymore. The Daltons didn't just raise me, they rewrote me. And now it was time I reclaimed the chapters they tried to erase. The next morning I stood outside the Daltons' house. Same white shutters, same overgrown rose bushes, same porch light that never quite worked. The one I used to stare at when I was 12, wondering if they'd locked the door behind me. I didn't knock. I couldn't. I wasn't ready for their eyes, for the lies they'd turn into justifications, for the silence they'd weaponize like they always had. Instead, I left the photo on their welcome mat. Delilah and Janice, smiling, side by side. I didn't leave a note, didn't need to. They'd know exactly what it meant. Back home, I shut every blind, unplugged the microwave, turned off my phone. I thought grief would come like a storm, loud and furious, but it came like fog, thick, heavy, silent. You don't hear it destroy you. You just stop seeing things clearly. Ever tried scrubbing kitchen tiles at 3 a.m. just to feel something solid? That week, I did. I didn't go to work that week. Didn't eat more than toast. I just sat on the floor with my knees to my chest, surrounded by old yearbooks, photos, letters, trying to piece together a life that was never really mine. I kept replaying every memory. Every time I'd asked about my birth story and was brushed off. Every time I saw Janice wince when someone asked if I looked like her. Every time she said, "He's just a little different." Now I knew why. I wasn't her son. I was her sister's child. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being a person and became her penance. The worst part wasn't the lie. It was how easily they lived with it. How holidays came and went. How Adam still called me the lucky one. How Chloe never once asked if I was okay when they forgot me. Birthday 3 years in a row. It wasn't just neglect. It was strategy. If they kept me confused, kept me grateful, I'd never ask for more. I remembered a day, maybe I was 6, when I ran inside crying because a kid at school said I was adopted. Janice had knelt down, looked me in the eye, and said, "Don't listen to other people. We're your family. That's all that matters." She hugged me, held me close. Now I realized she wasn't comforting me. She was containing me. The pain came in waves. One moment I'd feel nothing. The next I'd throw a cup against the wall just to hear something break that wasn't me. Then shame would creep in. How had I not seen it? How had I spent 4 decades trying to earn love from people who didn't even bother giving me truth? By the end of that week, I found myself whispering apologies to myself. I'm sorry you believed them. I'm sorry you tried so hard. I'm sorry they didn't see you. That's when I realized I wasn't grieving a mother I never knew. I was grieving the boy they trained me not to be. The boy who was loud, curious, full of questions. The boy who once asked where he came from and was punished with silence. I found one letter buried in a box, dated January 1983. It was from Delilah, addressed to Janice. "I'm scared," it read. "I don't know how to do this, but I want to try. I want him to know me. Even if I can't keep him, promise me he'll know." It was signed in blue ink. Love, D. No last name, no address, just hope, folded and forgotten. The paper trembled so hard, I thought it would dissolve. That's when the first tear hit the word promise, blurring the ink like her chances to know me. Not because it was sad, but because it was proof. Proof that I was wanted. That someone, somewhere, fought for me, even if no one else did. Tucked between old receipts and paper clips, I found a folded newspaper clipping. Local woman, 20, killed in highway crash. It was Delilah. No photo, no mention of a child, just 2 lines and a date. The world moved on, but I hadn't even begun. And that truth, as painful as it was the first thing that made me feel real again. A week after I found the letter, I drove 2 hours north to a town I'd only seen once, when I was 12 during a church picnic. Walter had mentioned it in passing, said Delilah spent her last year there, working at a floral shop called Fern and Root. It was still there. Same hand-painted sign, same ivy climbing the window. I walked in and asked for the owner. A woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked braids looked up. "You're Delilah's boy," she said before I could even speak. My knees nearly gave out. Her name was Ramona. She used to work with my mother. She remembered how Delilah would hum while arranging daisies, how she'd keep granola bars in her apron, how she once cried behind the counter on my first birthday because Janice had sent back the card she'd written. "She loved you," Ramona whispered, fiercely, even when they shut her out. She showed me a photo, Delilah in overalls, dirt on her cheeks, holding a tiny pot of baby's breath. "She talked about planting one for you every year, said it was your flower." I stood there, a grown man in a stranger's flower shop, crying like I just met my mother for the first time. Because maybe I had. Ramona handed me a small box, said she'd kept it in case someone ever came. Inside were little things: a knitted baby hat, a Polaroid of a hospital bassinet, and a note scribbled in messy cursive. "My Graham, no matter where you go, you'll always grow from love." I held that note to my chest, like it could rewrite the years. Driving back, I didn't feel empty. I felt steady. Still broken, but now the pieces had names. Delilah, Fern and Root, granola bars in her apron. Real things, not borrowed memories, not second-hand love. That night, I opened a new notebook, wrote one sentence. "I don't have to earn love. I was born worthy of." And I meant it. For the first time in 43 years, I let go of needing the Daltons to call me son. I was Delilah's. That was enough. I didn't confront Janice, didn't write a letter, didn't ask for apologies they weren't capable of giving. Instead, I mailed them the hospital Polaroid. No return address. No words. They'd know what it meant. In the months that followed, I planted baby's breath on my balcony, started volunteering weekends at a literacy center, began writing again, not for anyone else, but to remember who I was before the silence taught me to shrink. I wasn't angry anymore, just awake. There's a kind of peace that comes not from getting, but from walking away before bitterness anchors you in place. I even told my closest friend, Marcus, a guy I met at work 5 years ago. I showed him the photo, the letter, the shop. He didn't say much, just hugged me and said, "You were never invisible. You were just planted in the wrong garden." That line stayed with me, because maybe healing isn't about fixing what broke. It's about growing somewhere else, where your roots aren't questioned, where your name is said with love, where you don't have to beg for a seat because you finally built your own table. 6 months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, I packed up a few boxes and left the apartment I'd lived in for 12 years. No grand goodbye, no crowd waving me off. Just me, and a potted baby's breath riding shotgun. I moved 2 towns over, a smaller place with wide porches and slow mornings. Found a rental above a used bookstore, the kind with creaky floors and the smell of dust and old dreams. The owner let me stock the shelves twice a week in exchange for rent discounts. Said he liked the way I respected the spines. It was the first time I felt useful without feeling used. I didn't tell the Daltons I was leaving. Didn't owe them that. They hadn't earned the right to track my peace. A month after I settled in, a letter arrived. No return address. Just one line. You always were hers. The handwriting was Janice's. I didn't feel anger, just a quiet knowing. 15. Maybe she, emphasis, finally, emphasis, understood. Maybe not. Pause. 15. Either way, it wasn't mine to carry anymore. Pause. 15. I started teaching journaling classes at the community center. At first, just 5 people showed up, then 10. Now there's a waiting list. Pause. 15. One woman said, I, emphasis, never, emphasis, knew how much of me I left unwritten. I knew exactly what she meant. Pause. 15. Sometimes when I water the plants or wipe down the counter, I think about Delilah, about the way she hummed in the flower shop, about the courage it must have, emphasis, taken, emphasis, to write that note. Pause. 15. My Graham. No matter where you go, you'll always grow from, emphasis, love, emphasis. I keep it framed on my desk. Not as proof of what I missed, but as a promise of what I still carry. Pause. 15. I'm not healed. Healing isn't a finish line. It's a rhythm. Pause. 15. Some days are soft, others still carry echoes. But now, when I feel the weight of what was taken, I remember what was given too. A name, a truth, and the quiet freedom of finally being seen. Last Thanksgiving, I didn't sit at a long table filled with forced smiles and brittle laughter. I invited 3 friends over. Marcus brought sweet potato pie. We ate on the balcony under a thrifted string of warm lights. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like a guest. I felt home. I used to think revenge meant burning bridges. But sometimes, real victory is building one that leads far, far away from the people who taught you to doubt your worth. That's what I've done. Brick by brick, word by word. And every step I take on this new path is a quiet kind of justice they'll never understand. But I do. And that's from 1537 years. If you've made it this far, thank you for walking this road with me. Maybe you felt it too. That quiet ache of not belonging. Of wondering if love was something you had to earn instead of something you were born deserving. But I hope my story reminds you. You are not what others denied you. You are not the silence they wrapped you in. You are the story that survived anyway. Maybe you still hide holiday cards they never sent, or keep a drawer full of thank yous you never got to say. I did too. And sometimes, healing doesn't come with fireworks or applause. It comes with planting something small, watering it, and watching it bloom in soil that finally feels like yours. If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you of your own journey, or someone you know, leave a comment. Cement. Tell me what part hit hardest. Or just say, I'm growing too. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Burnt Bridges Tales. Because every week, we tell the stories people were never supposed to speak out loud, but needed to hear most. Until next time, take care of your roots. And keep growing toward your own light.